Chico cooking in the community center, trying to enhance the pantry items that you can pick up twice a month here. So we want to let you know that we're here to serve the community, and we want you to stop by to pick up some food. Even at the end of the month when you're kind of having a hard time, we are going to provide some wonderful fresh produce along with some pantry items. So we're just going to make a quick meal and show you how you can use some of these things to make a gourmet meal and really feel fancy. So we're going to run to the pantry right now and let you know some of the things that we're going to use today to make this meal. This is our pantry here, and we do get a lot of things donated, so we want to just thank the people that are a part of this community center. We also are kind of starting out, so we really want you all to come out and support us, and we want to just let you know that we're here. We have lots of pantry items, some things that are easy just to take home and kind of serve on some greens. Other things we may use, like today, we might use these canned tomatoes to make a little dish with our zucchini that got donated. So that's one of the things I'm gonna get from the pantry, and I'm gonna make it so that we're going to enhance our fresh produce. I think I might like make a rice pilaf. I know there's a lot of rice in Chico. It's one of our main crops. So we probably have a lot of rice that's coming into the center. So we did get some few things from the pantry, and I think I forgot to tell you we're making a dessert. We're gonna make a peach cobbler. So we can use some of these canned peaches, but we happen to have some peaches from the farmer's market that are kind of going bad, and we're going to use them up. And that's a way that you can use some things that are a little bit, not perfect to make like a dessert. So I'm going to grab some pastry stuff. So I'm going to get some flour. We're going to use some sugar. And also, because we're making our butternut squash with pumpkin, I just wanted to let you know if you didn't have fresh pumpkin, you could use pantry pumpkin, and it's just going to be as good. So I might take that into the kitchen in case we need to thicken up our soup or we don't have enough fresh pumpkin. I think the other thing we're looking for is a little bit of salt, because I like to use sea salt, so we add a little bit of salt, but you really want to taste your food before you over salt stuff. And I'm going to put a little bit of vanilla in our cobbler topping. So this is going to be a really fun meal, and I really want to encourage you guys to come here at the community center and pick up some items from the pantry, and then at home, whatever you use to make a healthy meal for your family and friends. So join us in the kitchen. We're going to get this meal done. Have a little bit of fun with your friends and family, and enjoy the pantry here at Chico Community Center. All right, hi, we're in the kitchen now. We're going to use all of our pantry items, and we're also going to use some things that are in season. That's a great way to save money, is to buy stuff that's in season. So we got some pumpkins donated, we picked up butternut squash, and we have an acorn squash. And the easiest thing to do with stuff like this is to bake it in the oven, and that way you don't have to hurt yourself while you're cutting, and it'll just bake on, we're going to put it in 400 for about an hour. And what you, most important thing to do is to kind of poke the squash so that it doesn't explode inside of the oven. But we also forgot to tell you that we wash our hands before we start cooking, and we also want to always be safe in the kitchen. So if you're too tired or if you're just not feeling well, it's better not to cook. So cooking is always done when you feel up to it, and that's why sometimes it's easy to use the pantry items if you don't want to cook too much. But our idea is to try to get these things in the oven so we can make a really healthy soup. And we're making like a roasted squash and pumpkin soup with our stock that we had gotten out of the pantry. And all you have to do is place it in the oven on a sheet tray. But I usually just put it on the top here, and then I put the sheet tray on the bottom so it catches anything that might fall down, like the juices. And this is a great way to do like sweet potatoes or a baked potato, and it's not so intense, as far as taking too much time, because sometimes when you're peeling and cooking, it's hard on you, and this is a great way to get started. So I'm gonna put a tray underneath so that if anything drips, and then when everything's done, I'll put it on the tray and take it out and let it cool, and then we're gonna blend it up with some other herbs and a little bit of citrus to make a really nice soup. So we'll get back to that in a little bit. Meanwhile, remember at the pantry we got this nice jasmine rice? So we're gonna make some rice and we're going to enhance it with some fresh kale so it's a little bit healthier. A lot of times with rice it's good just to rinse it. So I'm going to just put it in the pot. I think we're probably just gonna make like a cup of it. And I'm gonna add a little bit of salt and a little bit of olive oil, but usually you'll just measure out your rice. Probably do 2 cups, so I've got 1. And we're gonna rinse it. Now a lot of times, the rinsing is just to kind of make sure there's no stones in it or anything, and also to kind of get the rice a little more moist. So after we rinse it, we're going to strain it, and then we're going to add the extra stock and a little bit of the salt and the seasoning. So we have a colander down here to catch it. Just, you know, a little bit of the leftovers we don't want to waste. And then the other thing about making rice is that all rices have different amount of liquids that need in it and different times. So this jasmine rice is kind of a quick rice. It only takes about 25 minutes. A brown rice or a wild rice will take 45 minutes, and it actually takes a little bit more liquid. So that's one of the things you need to read on the label, which rice you're using and maybe how long it takes. But this is kind of a nutty flavor jasmine, and it really works well, and it's quick and easy, and a lot of the kids will enjoy it too. So we're going to put our little bit of salt we have here, a little bit of sea salt, and just a pinch. You don't want to over salt things, because you can always add salt, but you can't take the salt away. So usually I just use my hand and use and make sure that I don't put too much in. So that's probably enough, like a teaspoon. Then I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil or coconut oil or whatever oil you have. You know, some people use sesame. So I'm just putting that in there so it doesn't stick and it'll be kind of fluffy when we're done. I'm also going to add the stock. Again, you can use water. But when you do use water at home, we really want to make sure that you use quality water or water that has been filtered, because all this goes into your food, and you really want to make sure that you make healthy choices for making sure that your family's safe. Because sometimes the tap water may not be the best thing to make food with. All right, let's get this rice cooking. Again, I want to tell you that we are so lucky to have this pantry, and we're going to be using this stock, and it'll just, I think we're going to be using 1.5 cups per cup of rice. So that's 1 and 2. So altogether we're going to put 3 cups of stock in the rice. We're going to let it, we're going to make sure that the lid fits tight. And we're going to let it come to a boil, and then we're going to simmer it for about 20 minutes, and we're going to shut off the heat and let it sit for another 5 minutes. Then we're going to put our kale in it and maybe put a little bit of dressing to make it like a side dish for our rest of our meal. So let's get that going. We found those lemons that we're going to use later. Okay, so we're gonna, like we said, we're gonna turn the rice on high. We're gonna let it start to boil, and that will usually take a couple minutes, and then we're gonna put it on low. So that's important to not keep it on high the whole time, because the water will evaporate and then the rice will not cook. I have this water here boiling because we're gonna make a peach cobbler. Remember we talked about that in the pantry? And I have these peaches that we got at the farmer's market, and they're in season, but they're almost like out of season. So we just want to make sure we use the peaches because they only come around once a year. And if you don't have the fresh peaches, you can always use the peaches that are in the pantry, or pears, or plums, or blueberries. So this is just what we want to use today, because we want to use up these peaches before they go bad. So a great way to peel the peaches is to put them in a little bit of boiling water. So you kind of score the edges, just like we had done with our squash. Kind of score the, we want to make sure that we score it, and when we put it in the hot water, and then it's easy to peel. But if you don't want to do that, you can always just peel it with a knife. But this is just, you know, one of those kitchen tricks that not everybody knows about. It's the same thing that you can do with tomatoes when you're making tomato sauce with fresh tomatoes. You score the bottom and then you take out the top, and it just makes it easier to peel. So after we score the bottom, we're going to put it in this nice big pot of boiling water. And then we will just wait till these peels start to kind of come. This is called blanching. We're probably just going to blanch them really quickly and then let them cool and then cut them up for the peach cobbler. And I'm sure you'll be able to see that later because we're going to get to that. You know, dessert is always great, and using fresh fruit for dessert is a great way to get your nice nutrition, vitamins, and I don't know, just enjoy peaches because it's one of my favorite fruits. You don't get to get them very much. So we're going to just put those in there, and that's going to be one of our things that we're doing for prepping. A lot of times with cooking, it takes time, so you may want to do your prepping a little bit a day before.
Oh, well, it is just so great to have you here at the South Chico Community Assistance Center. We're located down on 18th and Park, and we have a pantry that we serve folks to, and we have some clothing. Our big goal is just to try to help people get through the end of the month, because it really is a struggle for a lot of folks. And what we really like is the ability to add to our pantry, and really to give people meals with dignity. It's so exciting. Thanks for you. So,
yeah, and the quality, and then also just the learning process of how to use the pantry items, and also, you know, we want to tell them whenever possible use fresh to, you know, make it a little bit more healthy. But when you don't have anything to eat and you come to the pantry, you're just really thankful. We really appreciate you, Mark, for what you're doing, and I'm so happy to be here to kind of give the little kitchen tips. And I'm happy to be here in Chico because I haven't been here, and it's really got it's an agricultural place, and there's so much produce and nuts and rice and all those things to use in the kitchen. So, well, plentiful. I feel like I'm an abundant of fruits and vegetables here in Chico.
well, we are happy to have you here in Butte County. It is a breadbasket of region, and so it's just great to be here. So thank you.
Yep, and don't forget to come by. We got lots of things for you and your family to eat healthy all through this season. Some of us are having a hard time, and it's one of those things that's hitting everyone. The food cost is so high when you go to the market, and even myself, you know, I have a family that we have to kind of keep an eye and budget our food too. And at the end of the month, sometimes we do get low on finances. So just remember that we're here for all families.
And we are open every other weekend, second and fourth weekend of the month, to try to help people get through that end of the month. So please stop on by. Thank you.
So these zucchinis got donated, and so we're going to try to use them in our dish. We're going to cut them and bake them off, and then roll them up with a little bit of fresh cheese, and we're going to make a little sauce from our tomatoes that were in the pantry. So usually I just use a baking tray, and I put a little bit of olive oil on it. And the next thing I do is season up the zucchini with a little bit of Italian seasoning and salt and pepper, just so that they have flavor when they come out of the oven. And then we're going to use that zucchini almost like lasagna noodles. You can roll it up or you can layer it. And that's a great way to get some vegetables that the kids will enjoy. If you kind of put a little sauce and cheese on top, they can pretend it's spaghetti without using the pasta noodles. So I'm going to do the slicing. You just do like this. And you always want to be careful in the kitchen. So a lot of times I fold my hands in a little bit when I'm holding things. And you just want to really be aware that knives are for adults and not for children. And children can help lay out the zucchini on the tray. And that's one of the things that you can teach children about cooking, but you really want to work with them. And that way, when they get a little bit older, they'll be able to help you more in the kitchen, and they won't be afraid. Because I think a lot of people don't cook because they're just a little bit intimidated. Okay, I got my olive oil. And again, I'm using a lot of these ingredients kind of sparingly. You don't have to, drown the zucchini in the olive oil. We just don't want stuff to stick. So then I'm gonna layer it down, and I'm just gonna bake these in the oven, again, for probably 10 or 15 minutes until they're soft. But we don't want to overcook them because we're going to cook them again with our noodles and lasagna. Perfect. Put a little bit of seasoning on there. Just kind of a little bit. This is a little Italian seasoning, a little bit of mix. And when I'm usually baking, I use dried herbs, but we're going to make pesto to put on top to make it delicious with the fresh basil. So we use a little bit of dry herbs, and then we enhance after things are done with fresh herbs. That's good. We'll get these in the oven. Cook them up. I think I forgot the salt. I always like to salt a little bit and put a little bit of pepper. Whenever you're cooking for friends and family, you should probably ask them in advance if they have any allergies or they have any preferences, because after the meal is done, it's really hard to figure that out. So if you're ever having friends for dinner, just ask them in advance if they have like nut allergies, or if they have, a lot of people are kind of non-dairy these days, but there's so many alternatives to dairy with the nuts and the creams and everything. So we just want you to be aware of people's allergies or preferences when you're cooking for others. We're gonna check on our squash. Just put that on top of there and get that done. And squash looks like it's getting done. Butternut squash and the pumpkin. And that's gonna be such a good autumn soup. These are some of the recipes. I wrote 2 books, so we're giving out some of the books here at the center to promote healthy cooking. And Andrew Weil, I did a co-author with him in 2004, and I did work for Celebrity and did a cookbook with Oprah Winfrey in 1994. So I've been working in the kitchen for a really long time. One of my first jobs were working at a fruit stand, so I really appreciate good fruits and vegetables. I got all these fresh herbs from the garden this morning. Basil and thyme and rosemary. That's really going to be great in our zucchini dish. And we're also going to use maybe a little bit of rosemary in the soup. But you only want to use a little bit of rosemary. It's very strong. The pesto. That's going to be our next thing we're going to make, so that we can use pesto in the zucchini soup, or any kind of pesto is always great to use with, again, using things in season. So basil is plentiful now, it's cheap. So a lot of times I make pesto and put it in the freezer for kind of a day when you really don't feel like cooking much. You pull out the pesto, you make some pasta, or you enhance a soup with just a little teaspoon. You can even use it on avocado toast. It's a great substitute for butter. Gonna get working, getting that pesto made. I'm not gonna put any dairy in our pesto today, because we're going to use a lot of cheese in the roll-ups. So we're going to just make it almost like a dressing. But you can, with pesto, you usually use pine nuts, Parmesan cheese. But I've been doing a lot of stuff without dairy, so I've been using nutrition neat yeast. So a lot of times brewer's yeast works really good in a pesto or in a sauce that you don't want to use dairy in. I'm going to also put a little, whoops, I'm going to throw the lemons around. We're going to use a little bit of lemon in our pesto too to bring out some fresh flavor. Whee! And then juggling in the kitchen. And you got to remember to have fun, because it is hard work in the kitchen, and sometimes it does get heated up. So take a little break if you get too hot in the kitchen. One of the things that I found out recently was lemons can go in the freezer like this. So when you get a bunch of lemons, again, they're coming up in season, instead of juicing them, you can just put the whole lemon in. So this was one from we had at our garden, I guess like last year. So we want to use these up, but we also want to use some fresh lemons too. All our little kitchen tips. Alright, so perfect. So the rice is getting done. We gotta get these peaches out of the hot water and let them cool. So I guess we'll start that. And if you want to, you can always put it in an ice bath, but I think we have plenty of time to let the peaches cool down before we make our cobbler. The cobbler is like a peach pie, but it just do the crust on top. And you can also use, in the pantry there was some pancake mix, so we might maybe use that for some of the toppings to make it easier. So we got these peaches, and let's see how the peels will come off real easily after they've been blanched. So it just is an easier way to peel the peaches. And because we're going to be cooking the peaches in the cobbler, it kind of gets it a little started. And I like using the colander because there might be some nice juice that can come through, and we'll use that to thicken our peaches and put a little bit of cornstarch in there. And like I said, we might use something from the pantry to make the topping. Let it cool down for a minute, and I want to be sure that you're safe in the kitchen, so make sure you use your hot pads. And it's always best to just give it a minute to cool down so that you don't hurt yourself with the hot water. So safety is number one in the kitchen. Eating healthy is super important, and also making sure that the kids are safe around the hot stove, and making sure you never leave something like this out for somebody to kind of grab, or that might get caught, you know, on your sleeve or something. So that's one of the most important things with cooking, is being safe. All right, so I also like to use my nose a lot of times. So a lot of people have different skills in the kitchen, and mine is I have a strong sense of smell. So I always like smell the rice when it's done. I can tell when the squashes are done because they'll be, you know, it'll smell good. So that's one of the other things that you can use your eyes to make sure you have a pretty plate. I always say eat the rainbow, so make sure you eat a variety of fruits and vegetables. You don't really want to get stuck on eating the same thing every day, because your body needs lots and lots of variety of fruits and vegetables. And each fruit and each herb has its own minerals and micro minerals. So just be sure to eat a variety of food. And that's why you eat in season, because that gives you variety. So we're got pomegranates and persimmons. We're so excited about the fall, and we're going to use these in the salad.
So you don't set timers, you just wait till you smell it or it looks done?
You know, I'm a little bit dyslexic, and so like that whole timing stuff and all that, how much time and recipes and stuff, it's not my thing. You know, I mean, I wrote the recipes like that. Yeah, so the main thing too is like I talked about, like all the squashes will take different times.
Yeah.
But you just take a fork and you make sure they're done. Like, see, this is done on one side, but it's not done all the way through. You know, so you kind of turn it so that it goes one side.
And do you think it has more to do with size? Like, do you think that butternut's going to take longer than that acorn just because?
Well, it has to do with the density, but you see right now, see like this pumpkin's getting done, and you see how like this is not so much done, and then this butternut squash is not hardly done at all. So, you know, but because we're going to use it in a soup, we want to make sure it's going to blend up, you know. So in a little bit, we'll take the pumpkin out, and then again, the reason why we put the tray underneath so it's catching the drips and stuff. And those are just ideas. You can also put it on a tray, but if you put it on the tray, sometimes it kind of burns on that one side. Okay, so we're gonna work a little bit with the peaches because we got those guys going. And if we just take a quick, you know, we peeled them, and we're gonna add all the different things to it. We're gonna use the pancake mix that we set to the top of the cobbler. So that's one of the things we got out of the pantry. And I think we have some leftovers from before. So we're gonna go in and get some of that pancake mix for our topping of our cobbler. a little bit of sugar that we got from the pantry, and we're gonna thicken it up with a little bit of cornstarch. So those are the things that are gonna make the dessert kind of pull together. Got our zucchinis done. And we're going to make our pesto. So we talked about making pesto. A lot of times you put cheese and nuts and stuff, but we're going to make it more with lemon and garlic and olive oil. So that's going to be our pesto. And it's going to end up looking like this. We're going to use it sparingly because it's kind of strong, and the stuff that's left over we're going to put in the freezer for another day when we're tired and we just want to put it in a pasta dish. Next thing we're going to do is make the sauce for our zucchini roll-ups. So we're talking about using some pantry items. We have this classic tomato, but we're going to enhance it a little bit with some fresh stuff. So we're going to use some of our garlic and our onions, and we're going to saute it slowly to get the flavor up, and then we're going to add our tomatoes. And don't forget, we're going to use that pesto. That's going to make it really good. Sugar to our peaches. I'm just going to add a little bit of cornstarch and a little bit of maple sugar. Give it another flavor. So I'm going to add some sugar. The peaches were really, really tasty as they are. I did taste them, and they're not at all needing too much sugar, but everybody likes sweet when they're done with their savory dinner. So we add a little bit of brown sugar, or I like to use this maple sugar sometimes. And then we're going to add a little bit of cornstarch so that when the cobbler cooks, it'll thicken up. So I usually just use about a teaspoon. I'll put it in there, and I'm going to stir it, incorporate it, and as it cooks in the oven with the topping, it's going to get nice and thick. So that's how we make the peach cobbler. And I'm gonna add cinnamon. Look at this big bunch of pancake mix we're gonna use. So we found this in the pantry, and we're gonna have to find ways to use it. So that's why we're gonna use it for the cobbler topping. But if you don't have pancake mix, you can make your own by just a little bit of flour and some baking soda, and we're gonna use some butter. But again, if you're not using dairy, you can use coconut oil or even a lighter oil like canola or sassafras. So we're going to make our topping, and we're going to first put the butter in there. So we softened the butter earlier. And then we are going to make sure we don't make a mess. We wash our hands. I do use my hands a lot in cooking. I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty, but if you are, you can always use a spoon. Our rice is ready to be turned down. It kind of is on low now. I'm going to add this pancake mix because we got that at the pantry and we don't want to find different ways to use things. So I'm going to add that to the butter. I always love vanilla, so I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla to that. And cinnamon, because cinnamon goes really good with peaches. I think it does anyways. But if you don't like any of these ingredients, you can always find things that you like. I'm looking for my vanilla that I got from the pantry. And vanilla is a little bit expensive, so we just use a little bit of it. It's really good in coffee too. Add a little bit of vanilla, or if you're making your own nut butters. It's just one of those things that we love. I've been putting a little bit of vanilla in my water. to make myself drink more water. Because sometimes, you know, when you're in the kitchen, you need to hydrate yourself. So I've been getting this vanilla and putting just a little bit in my ice water, and it seems to be easier to, there we go, easier to get that water down. So I'm putting some vanilla in there. When you're making cobbler without using the pancake mix, it's kind of like making like a crust for a pie. So you see how we have the flour and the butter, a little bit of vanilla. And if we weren't using this pancake mix, we use flour. And then also I put a little bit of baking soda in there so it puffs up a little bit. So I just use my hands and mix it until it's like a good consistency. And you can add a little bit of milk if you think you need it, or a little bit of water. And I think since we're here at the pantry, and we could have found some almond milk that was back there, or some other milk, but I think I'll just use a little bit of water, because we have this pancake mix that probably has already got dehydrated milk in it and stuff. So that's just kind of like crumbly, like you do for a pie crust, and then you just add a little bit of liquid, and then it'll pull together. We're going to put our peaches in this nice bowl. This is a baking dish, because we're going to have to bake it off. So it looks like it fits pretty good. Get a spoon and mix this up, just so that, remember we put that cornstarch in there to thicken it? We're just trying to get it so it's just mixed in so that it can kind of thicken up. And then I'm going to add some of this good water that we talked about earlier into the pancake mix topping. Wash my hands just a minute. It's taking a minute, but sometimes you just have to slow down if things aren't working. Just take a minute, get things organized. There we go. So I'm going to put this a little bit in the measuring so I don't dump the whole thing and mess up my topping. So I'm probably only going to need like a quarter cup of milk or water, just to kind of get it so that it's like a pancake mix. So you're going to just put it in here. Sometimes it's good to use cold water. I think I can still use this one spoon. I'll just bring it over here because we're going to pop it in the oven. See how the topping is going to be like a little pancake? It looks like I might need a little bit more water, but you just put it in slowly because you don't want it too wet. So you're trying to make it more like a pie crust instead of pancake like mix, which would be more wet. It's kind of looking good. And you know, you have to remember too, we have all this liquid in this peaches here, so that's going to absorb some of this topping. And you may want to get some ice cream for to have it later, but it's just going to be really good just all by itself. Alright, I think it's good. I don't know if I need any more water. I think it'll be perfect. So I'm going to put the topping in that, like spoon it in, like they do in the South. They make it like a little cobbler. And if you wanted to, if you're making like a pie crust, or if you've got a pre-bought pie crust, you could just lay it on top. But you know, we wanted to use some of the things that are in the pantry, so that's why we used the pancake mix. And sometimes at home you don't have all the ingredients, you know, like flour and all the baking soda and stuff. So this is just a great way to do that. I'm gonna maybe add a little bit of brown sugar on top, just so it gets kind of gooey on top, and that the pancake mix might not be too sweet, and we want this to be a really good dessert. So I had my mix of maple sugar, or you can use brown sugar. We're just going to put a little bit on top, just to kind of add a little extra flavoring. Okay, Okay, so we're gonna pop that in the oven. I think some of those squashes are ready. So, like I said, we wanna be really careful. So I'm gonna get a hot pad and I'm gonna find a spot to put that stuff down. It's always good to try to clean up a little as you're going, but not to get too carried away because it takes away from your time cooking. Okay, so you see how I can tell that these things are getting done? Because they're juicing up like a sweet potato. So, and that's why we added this little tray on the bottom so it'd be easy for me to get it out. Oops. Like I said, we want to be careful in the kitchen. I think these are definitely done, but the butternut squash does not look completely done. So I'm gonna put this here. Cool down, and we're gonna cut them open and scoop it out and make a really nice fall soup in this food processor or blender, whatever you have at home. Gonna make some room for our cobbler, and we're gonna continue to cook that butternut squash because it's a little bit dense and it's not done. Pop that in there. So probably by the time the butternut squash is done, the cobbler will be ready, and we'll pull it out and we'll put it aside for after we have a nice meal. But if you don't eat your vegetables, you can't have dessert. Alright, rice is finally done. Checking up. So our rice had done, not complete. We're still working on a few meals, so we're gonna let this set aside. We're gonna maybe saute some kale and add it to our rice to make a nice side dish. Rice. Got all cooked up. It smells good. Sometimes, you know, with these soups, you can add a little apple or some carrots. So don't be shy to make your own version of this fall soup. Nice on the bottom of this. Squash got done, pumpkin's done, the acorn squash is done. We're gonna blend it up in the food processor or the blender. Looks like our cobbler's looking good. It's looking nice. Bring the oven down. Alright. I think we are going to saute some kale next. And figure out a couple more minutes and add a fresh tomato in there. It's all delicious and chunky. So even though we used the canned tomatoes from the pantry, we did have a couple fresh tomatoes, and whenever possible, just add fresh stuff to your pantry items. Everything's smelling so good. Looking good. Getting our appetite up with all these colors and smells. And you know, your digestion does start in your nose. Kind of get everything going. You start smelling stuff. You start seeing things. And then you start thinking about eating. So try to make things look good. So with our zucchini roll-up, we're going to use fresh mozzarella and some shredded mozzarella. So it's going to be cheesy mozzarella rolls with fresh tomato and using some of our pantry tomatoes. All we did was put a little bit of olive oil and a couple cloves of garlic and a half an onion in there to kind of make a nice sauce. And texture is really important when you're cooking too, so that's why I added that fresh tomato, just to give it a little bit of texture. And remember, we had the zucchinis that we already had cooked, so we're going to roll them up and put them in this baking dish like a lasagna, and then instead of using the noodles, we're going to use the zucchini. Get that done.
we go. And yes, sometimes it's messy, so we're gonna be over here. I guess because we're gonna use the pesto, we don't need to use the kale, but we're gonna use the kale next to make a rice, to mix with that rice. Because, you know, rice by itself could use a little bit of dressing up, and whenever you can, just add some fresh greens or some fresh herbs, or in this case, we're gonna saute this kale, make it a little more tender, and then it's gonna make the rice a little bit a better nutrition meal. So we're still working through all this stuff. We're gonna move this over here because we're going to use this for our soup. And we're going to move our cheese over here. And we are gonna get this in the oven, because that's what you do. You try to get everything in the oven and try to get things done so that you can enjoy all the things together in the meal. So the only thing we're gonna do next is finish up baking the zucchini rolls. We're gonna saute the kale, put with the rice, and then we're gonna have salad. So it sounds like a really well-rounded meal with lots of fresh things and using the pantry items. So, we'll just show you, kind of take these zucchinis and line them up. We're going to use the pesto to enhance the flavor that we made earlier. We get a little spoon. Or we can use the knife. I'm done. Get a little knife, so we're going to add this pesto on here to make it delicious, just on the bottom side. And then we're going to add the cheese. And then we're going to roll them up, and we're going to continue to do that until we're done with all of these guys. And we're going to add the tomato sauce on top. So whenever possible, use fresh ingredients. I saw that this was a pretty good deal, so I got some fresh mozzarella. And then I'm going to roll it up like we talked about. And then it's going to be kind of like that, like a little lasagna roll up. And that way we use that zucchini. Sometimes I saute, instead of using the cheese, I saute some tofu. And I use that instead of the cheese if you have people that would rather not eat dairy. So you just, still using the pesto without cheese and to enhance the meal. And whenever possible, use fresh. But as we know, winter's coming up, and we're going to have that pesto that got left over in the freezer. So this is a great way to kind of keep summer all year round. Things don't have to be perfect. We're gonna just stack them in a row, kind of make it kind of fun. And as this all kind of comes together, it'll kind of melt in, and we're gonna add that tomato sauce that we just made on top. It's just kind of a fun way to kind of make an alternative lasagna without using noodles. So a lot of times we all eat a lot of carbohydrates, and this is one way that we can use our fresh fruits and vegetables. But if you didn't want to make rice, like we're making rice as our side, you can always cook up some noodles. As a kid, this was one of the things that the children can help with, as far as layering the cheese and rolling up the zucchini, because everything's been cooled down and they won't get hurt, but it's a way that they can learn about cooking. So I think our sauce is done, and I want to make sure that these zucchini rolls are going to get in the oven. And we are going to add a little bit more cheese, because we're not really having any meats or protein except for the cheese and the vegetables. So I'm just going to put a little bit more cheese on top to make it really delicious. And then we'll throw the other side. Wash our hands, and we'll put sauce on top. waste. And then don't be afraid to taste things because I haven't really tasted this and I did use some fresh stuff. So sometimes I just get a little spoon and taste everything so that I know it's, needs salt. This is tasting a little sweet and I think I need to add a little bit of salt. But the cheese also has salt in it. And I know I have it here. And sometimes I add lemon. So with a little bit of tomato sauce for the acidity. So I add just a little bit of lemon to it, kind of cut the acid. So that will make it a little less acidity. Lemons are one of my favorite things in the kitchen. Just love lemon on salad, lemon on pasta. So I'm just gonna do a dump because we need to get this stuff in the oven. Use all the tomato sauce, everything out. No wasting around here. And then since I already had this out, I think I'll add a little bit more cheese on top. It's gonna be cheesy rolls. And then we have some fresh basil, so we'll chop that up and put that on top, so it looks really nice. A little chiffonade. Okay, let's get this in the oven and finish up our meal because everybody's hungry. And I think we've had enough cooking and we need a little more relaxing. So that's what we're gonna do. Check on our cobbler. Looks like it's getting done. I think I'll pull it out because it looks brown and we don't want it to get overcooked. So let's make room on the top of the stove for that and make sure we have some nice dry towels. So if towels get wet, they do not do well. They can burn you. So I think it's always important. Kind of check this out. Looks kind of done. I think it's going to be a little wet. I'm going to add in a little bit more cornstarch, but I think it will be all right. We'll put it up here, and that way we set it up there to cool for a minute before we move it. We're going to put our lasagna down here, our zucchini roll-ups, kind of finish up in the oven. And then I think we need to saute some kale and make our salad and set the table, and then we'll have some food.